Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of UCF Football Now. I am Mike Bianchi, sports columnist of the Orlando Sentinel. That man right over there, you know him, Jason Beede. He is the UCF insider, the UCF beat writer for the Orlando Sentinel and OrlandoSentinel.com. Only pennies per day for a digital subscription, by the way. Cheap plug right there. All right. Big win for UCF over the weekend. Monumental game in New Orleans against Tulane, nationally ranked. Tulane, the first time they've hosted a game with both teams nationally ranked since 1949. UCF ends up winning that game 38-31. John Rice Plumlee reinserted back as the starting quarterback, rushes for 176 yards. That was a record, a single game record for a UCF quarterback, broke the record of the great Big Ten. Jason Beede, was it surprising at all that John Rice Plumlee was the starting quarterback?
No, it was not surprising, to me at least. I mean, he was the starting quarterback before he went down. He was cleared to play against Memphis. I think they made the right decision to lean with Mikey Keene at Memphis. He obviously won the game in a great fashion on the road and a great performance for him. I just think once John Rice was cleared and ready to go, he's Gus Malzahn, the starting quarterback. Gus told us after the game, his position traditionally, he's not gonna, just because you get hurt doesn't mean you're gonna lose your starting job. Once you're healthy, you're back in that role. I mean, am I surprised by that? No. Is that fair to Mikey Keene? That's a different conversation. I think the offense still rolled with John Rice, obviously. Maybe they would have done some things differently. The passing ability of, Mike Keene. I don't think Kobe Hudson, loved only getting a couple catches, and they used Ryan O'Keefe in different ways. Javon Baker caught a touchdown. But, look, it's easy to say they throw the ball more with Mikey, and they run the ball more with John Rice. So I think they would have won the game either way. But to stick with John Rice is not surprising to me.
I was surprised. I thought he would go with Mikey Keene until further notice. As you pointed out many times, Mikey Keene was playing well. The offense was humming pretty well with Mikey Keene as the quarterback. And I've heard coaches say, hey, you don't lose your job for an injury before, but I never really believed it. And Gus Malzahn, as you said, after the game came right out and said that. So, yeah, I was a little bit surprised. But, hey, Gus Malzahn knows this team a lot better than we do. And I've got to tell you, I don't think Gus Malzahn gets nearly enough credit for being an offensive guru. I mean, we always talk about the young, hot guys who throw the ball around the field and have 400 yards passing per game. I think Gus Malzahn is an excellent offensive play caller. He obviously saw something in that Tulane defense that said, hey, we can run the ball on this team. Tulane's defense was ranked 16th nationally, number one in the American, and UCF just ran over that defense, and John Rice Plumlee was a big part of that. Do you think UCF fans and college football in general appreciates Gus Malzahn as a play caller?
I don't think so, truthfully, at least UCF fans. I think there's a portion of UCF fans that absolutely do, but if you check Twitter and the message boards halfway through the first quarter when UCF was up 10-0 over Tulane, you would have think they were down 20. I mean, UCF fans were complaining left and right about the quarterback decision and well, Mikey would have made this pass or John Rice would have made this run. I mean, I understand it's controversial and UCF fans feel for Mikey and the way he's been, I guess, treated. For Gus to stick with John Rice again, I think overall they win the game. It's probably Gus Malzahn's biggest win at UCF, top 20 road win. I mean, to keep you in contention for the title game, it absolutely is up there. And I think overall UCF fans do appreciate Gus, but I think there's a portion of them, especially when things aren't going well, that even when things go well, they are upset with certain decisions, and that's why they're fans, right, Mike?
Exactly. I mean, we could say I said the same thing when Heupel was at UCF. The UCF fans didn't appreciate him, and now it's Gus Malzahn. And you're right. I think most fans do. But when you look at UCF's offense, they're ranked in the top 10 nationally. I looked this up before the show. 2,495 yards rushing, 2,482 yards passing. So that is what I call a balanced offense. And I just don't think fans appreciate the running game because it's not pyrotechnic or whatever. Even though John Rice Plumlee, he was certainly pyrotechnic on Saturday. I think the controversy is over. John Rice Plumlee, in my opinion, is the quarterback moving forward, unless, of course, there's another injury issue. I don't know if we see Mikey Keene again unless it's mop-up time. I think John Rice Plumlee is clearly the starting quarterback.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's Gus Malzahn's guy. He was his guy before he got hurt. He was his guy after he got hurt. He's going to be continue to be his guy unless he gets hurt again, which unfortunately is possible the way he runs. And I'm not saying he shouldn't run as hard as he does. He's obviously passionate about the game and will do anything to get the first down or the touchdown. That's awesome. But it wouldn't be surprising if something happened again. Unfortunately, God forbid, I don't want him to get hurt. I don't want anyone to get hurt. But I think we won't see Mikey Keene again. And that's, maybe they're up a bunch on Navy. You have Thomas Castellanos, who's already played in 4 games. Maybe Mikey gets thrown into a mop-up duty. But at that point, you can just hand the ball off. I mean, we'll see what happens. But I'd be surprised if we see Mikey again.
All right, let's talk about UCF's defense. Red zone, especially, they came into the Tulane game #1 in the nation in red zone defense. But Tulane, I think 5 of 5 in the red zone, although UCF did force a couple of turnovers. What's the deal with UCF's red zone defense?
Yeah, it was UCF's toughest test. Obviously, I mentioned top 20 road game. I was still surprised at times. I mean, we had seen time and time again UCF this season give up a lot of yards, but then hold strong in the red zone, whether that means no points or just field goals. For Tulane to go 4 out of 5 on touchdowns and 5 for 5 with another field goal in there was surprising to me. I would have thought maybe they would have been able to get a stop or 2 in the red zone just based on what they do. That shouldn't take away from how talented this Tulane team is. They're obviously a good team. They're still ranked in the top 25 for a reason. So it was a little bit surprising, but the fact that they made Michael Pratt uncomfortable throughout the game. Gus Malzahn highlighted what Ricky Barber did and some of the other members of the defensive line. They got the turnovers and look, the offense was able to roll and put more points up on the board than Tulane did. So that's what matters, I guess.
Okay, UCF clearly now in the driver's seat in the American Athletic Conference with 2 games remaining. You just mentioned they have Navy and then USF the day after, or 2 days after Thanksgiving. Couldn't we see a rematch between UCF Tulane? Do you think it's going to be UCF Cincinnati? What would be the better matchup?
Well, if UCF takes care of Navy, about rivalry matchups, and then that can, this is going to be USF Super Bowl, no head coach. They have nothing to lose, right? So that's a tougher test than, we'll get into that next week's show. But assuming UCF wins out, they'll be hosting the American Athletic Conference Championship on December 3rd. The most interesting matchup is while UCF is playing USF on that Saturday, at Friday at noon, I believe on ABC or ESPN, it's their big Friday matchup. Tulane plays at Cincinnati. And that game, if things hold the way they should, that game will determine who goes to the title game. So it's really likely that you can get a rematch of either, and then the winner of that will travel to UCF. So Cincinnati looked beatable to me heading into the UCF matchup. Obviously, it was still a tough game, and same goes for Tulane, but that one should be a lot of fun to watch.
All right, we're gonna project ahead. Let's say UCF does win the American Athletic Conference Championship. Then let's look at some bowl projections. UCF, if they are the highest ranked group of 5 team, which they would be if they went out, Cotton Bowl, perhaps against Alabama, perhaps against Tennessee, and former UCF coach Josh Heupel. Any of those matchups intriguing to you?
Oh, of course they are. Absolutely they are. And those aren't just our projections. I was looking at Sports Illustrated and 24/7 Sports, and ESPN, I think, had UCF in the Cotton Bowl against one of those teams. So obviously you talk about UCF, Alabama, Gus Malzahn, Nick Saban, have the success he's had. Alabama having a down year. Tennessee, obviously, they're, you talked about Josh Heupel and Danny White and that matchup. And yeah, I think UCF fans would be happy with either of those teams potentially.
Yeah, and even though, there's some other projections of maybe Penn State or Utah and Washington, and maybe those games might be more winnable, but I don't care. I would want to see Heupel in the Cotton Bowl or Nick Saban in the Cotton Bowl. To me, to play an SEC team, and if you were to beat the SEC team, then you can shut up those SEC snobs even more if you're UCF fans.
Yeah, I think, Penn State, obviously UCF's played them before, and Utah and Washington would be fun, of course, from the Pac-12. And you talk about Utah, Florida earlier in the year, but UCF against Alabama or UCF against Tennessee is the preferred matchup for me as well.
All right, let's do a little rapid fire, shall we? The Knights are 17-point favorites against Navy at home this weekend. Navy rallied back, almost beat Notre Dame last week. Notre Dame's receiver made an unbelievable catch in that game. Is this a possible trap game for UCF? And what's the deal with the 11 a.m. kickoff on Saturday?
Yeah, I think there's UCF has to be careful not looking too far ahead like we have on this show talking about the AAC title game at home in a couple of weeks and the Cotton Bowl on January 2nd against Alabama. Wow.
Absolutely.
You have to get past this Navy team. Gus Malzahn said Monday they have a bad taste in their mouth, right? They lost the Navy last year. It was a different team, a lot of injuries, but still, nonetheless, that was one of the only Navy wins last year for them. So Navy is always tricky with the triple option offense. 11 a.m. kickoff. It's interesting. A lot of UCF fans were saying, why does ESPN hate us? My reaction is, actually, I think ESPN likes UCF. That's why they're giving them the ESPN2 game on the better network. Because if UCF had lost to Tulane, it either would have been on ESPNU or ESPN Plus, and no one is watching that game. So to have the game on 2 is why it's at 11 a.m. Eastern. Those don't happen a whole lot, of course, Eastern time at least. They happen every week in Central time. So I think that's why Eastern time is the better time for me.
Yeah, you can't get all excited about that $50 million in Big 12 TV money you're going to be collecting in a few years and then complain when your game gets moved for TV, Jason.
Right, I agree. All right, Mike, what are your thoughts on UCF's fourth and 1 play call from their own 34 with 10 minutes left? They had to convert there. Bowser throwing the ball. What happened there?
I was incredulous when I saw it. Not so much that they went for it on 4th and 1 from their own 34, even though they were ahead by a touchdown, but the fact that Isaiah Bowser threw a bomb to John Rice Plumlee. Bowser was lined up in the Wildcat or the Wild Knight formation. I don't think that play was ever supposed to be run. I don't know if Gus Malzahn, I don't know what he was thinking if that was the play call. But it seemed to me like UCF thought that Tulane was offsides and they got a free play, but offsides was never called. And luckily, John Rice Plumlee blew by the defender and got interfered with. Otherwise, man, if that truly was the call, Gus Malzahn is gutsier than I thought he was. Wow. All right, Oklahoma has now lost 2 straight. They're 5-5 right now. You think Dylan Gabriel regrets his decision to transfer?
No, I don't think he does. I know that UCF fans are probably really happy to see him struggling and see Oklahoma struggle. Are they going to be bowl eligible? Who knows? I don't think he regrets his decision for 3 letters NIL. Anyways, moving on to 3 more letters. CFP, Mike. CFP. Should Tennessee have run up the score on Missouri like they did?
Scored 66 on Missouri. They're scoring late. Josh Heupel piling it on. Yes, he should have run up the score. First of all, he's trying to win his quarterback, Hendon Hooker, the Heisman Trophy. So the bigger the stats, the better your chances of winning the Heisman. And secondly, Tennessee's still trying to get into the college football playoff. I mean, if Georgia wins the SEC championship game, there is a chance the second SEC team could get into the championship game. And why not Tennessee? If TCU falters and loses a game, why couldn't Tennessee slide in to that 4th playoff spot? I don't blame Josh Heupel for running up the score. I would do the same thing. All right, injury update. UCF, Quadric Bullard, done for the year. Tell us some other injuries.
Yeah, this is really tough news for Quadric Bullard. He was seen walking out the field at Memphis in a knee brace using crutches. Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste and Devon Wilson got a little bit better news. They're considered day-to-day for the Navy matchup. Both of them, I believe, had dealing with head injuries or upper body injuries. I know Jeremiah got hit on the play where the Memphis tight end just ran right into him with his head. He got ejected. So Gus told us Monday they're both day-to-day. Obviously, UCF has the depth that linebacker freshman Cam Moore from Sanford Seminole played really well starting Jeremiah's spot. So it's going to be interesting to see if those two are back, but unfortunate for Quadricola for sure.
All right, it's time. The UCF fan or fans of the week. Jason Beede, you always pick. Who is it this week?
I think for me, it's the entire fan base that traveled to New Orleans. I was really, really impressed. I flew up on a rare same day of the game flight, 6:30 a.m. out of Orlando, and it was jamming with UCF fans. So, Tulane Stadium is a little bit smaller, but it really, really felt like a home game. I mean, it was maybe easily 50-50 UCF Tulane fans. Maybe at times it sounded even more like 60-40. I mean, I was surprised that Tulane's fan base didn't show up for a game like this, but shout out to all the UCF fans that made the trip. Not surprising, of course. Nolens was a fun place, Mike.
Jason Beede, I thought I taught you better. You are way too young. You fly, if you're going to New Orleans, you fly in a day ahead of time on a Friday. You go out to eat, you charge it to the company, go out to one of those great New Orleans restaurants. That's how you travel, Jason Beede. You don't go on the day of the game and then fly out right after the game. No. Jason, shame on you for that. Right? That's going to do it for another edition of UCF Football Now. Do not forget, we usually drop on Tuesday at OrlandoSentinel.com. We also have our own YouTube channel. That's right, we are big time. We have our own YouTube channel, so tell your friends about us. Tell 10 of your friends about us. We love doing the show. We want your support. We love covering UCF football. So again, every Tuesday we usually drop for UCF Football Now. All right, for Jason Beede, I'm Mike Bianchi. We will talk to you next week for the next edition of UCF Football Now.